So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn the presentation over to Matt Pfohl from Sopris Systems, and he'll get everyone introduced and get us started. Matt?
Thank you very much, Bill. Matt Pfohl, Executive Vice President of Sopris. I think I've met some of you that have been on our other web series. I've also got with us from Microsoft, Chet Kloss. Chet, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm a Power Platform Architect at Microsoft. I'm 20 years on the job today, as a matter of fact, and I'm happy to be with you.
So just to kind of frame the series up, as we mentioned, it's been a multi-part series starting with how digital transformation is impacting oil and gas, and then we started to get into specific work group areas as it relates to operations, field ticketing, and so on. We've also had Trenergy as part of our series, who's a management consulting firm specializing in really process optimization within oil and gas, as well as change management and other process improvement elements, and really how to apply technology to drive efficiency and better operations by the customer experience. And so today, this is really focused on introduction to the Power Platform. It's a very incredibly powerful element of the all-up platform that Microsoft has today. And we'll talk a little bit about how some oil and gas companies are leveraging that platform. And then following this particular series today, we're going to actually have additional webinars on the Power Platform, very specific to unique field service, oil and gas field service use cases. So we're going to be taking it kind of down a level into the particular product groups. So as we talked about, there's a lot of different things that are happening that are affecting kind of how we do business today. And as a result of that, when we look at really some of the bigger economical elements that are impacting the oil and gas services industry, it's really changing how we look at technology, both the speed by which we have to adapt technology to solve issues, as well as what do we expect from technology. And really, when you look at Microsoft's kind of core platform, and you look at a philosophy that we follow, there's four key elements to that, which is really connected, open, integrated, and intelligent. And particularly when you look at oil and gas service industries and you look at the ecosystem that we work in, this puts a lot of demand as it relates to how we work with our customers, our partners, and even our own employees. And so when you look at the Power Platform specifically, and we'll talk about kind of the three key components of that, which is data, canvas, or ability to create apps, not just as an IT user, but as a business user, as well as interoperability, leveraging flow as it relates to integrating systems and being able to take action across a platform. It's a very unique approach. And so when you look at what the oil industry is really how they're applying that technology, if you think, particularly in larger firms, we've got all this legacy data and systems, and we're trying to figure out where do we jump in on our digital journey. And Power Platform is a great way to really look at starting to modernize your platform, while over time we look at replacing these different legacy systems. So how do we change and get to a modern unified interface with mobile capability? How do we consolidate data and the ability to take action across multiple systems and entities? And ultimately, how do we drive a true consistent view of our data that's accurate and in real time? And so this is where a lot of oil and gas companies are investing heavily in the Power Platform, to looking at a way to quickly start creating value in how we apply technology, how we modernize technology to start with our digital journey. And then over time, looking at additional layers like business application layers, such as some major business application layers like ERP and field service and so on. So with that, I think what I would like to leave is just understanding, and today is the ability to see an amazing platform that allows us to very quickly start creating value within our organization. A platform that is not 100% reliant on IT to be able to, if I'm a power user, a business user, I can start, at a practice level, creating our own apps and so on. So when we look at the all-up platform within Microsoft Azure, as it relates to the series, we talked about that blue box there, which is some of the operational layers of the operation from a finance kind of project management and field service perspective. What we also will be talking about is really data and intelligence and how we can leverage cognitive services, things like AI and things like machine learning and so on, to improve the efficiency by which we operate our business, as well as giving us insight into the business we should be in, or how do we end up making a more profitable type of business model. And then finally, Office 365 is the productivity suite and how that kind of interoperates amongst this platform. So what's very unique about the approach is that Microsoft has taken an approach where if you want to consume the entire platform over time, you have that option. But if you really want components of it more in a best of breed, and you want to bring those components into your existing investment ecosystem, it's really designed as that. It's a very open platform, and it's very unique in the sense that many companies are one or the other. They don't allow you to, in essence, consume technology either at a best of breed level or an enterprise level. So finally, today we'll be talking about that Power Platform layer, which is what Chet's going to take us through. And look, hopefully you'll walk away with a foundational understanding of the platform. And then, as I mentioned, in future webinars, we'll kind of take a deeper dive into some very specific use cases. So with that, Bill, let's transition over to Chet, and Chet's going to walk us through an overview of the Power Platform.
Thanks very much, Matt. So now I guess I'm going to get control of this. What I'm going to be doing today, spending about 10 or 15 minutes in slides, and then about 20 or 25 minutes in actual demonstration. I want to set a foundation so that you understand what the Power Platform is, and then we're going to go in and we're going to see it. I'm going to build some things live in front of you so you get the feel of what it is to use it, and then I'm going to show some things that are already built, sort of expanded off of what we're working with. The example I'm going to use today is one that I did for a very large oil and gas company as a part of a starter application to help them train in the use of the tool. But the Power Platform in general, it was created so that we can allow, to the extent your company wants to, business analysts who have the knowledge of the business problem to get involved in the solution. Okay, I'm clicking on my slide and it's not moving. Okay, here we go. So it was mentioned on the title slide, it said Dynamics 365 in the Power Platform. Technically, that's not correct. What the Power Platform is the platform that our first-party apps, the Dynamics 365 apps, are built on. So Dynamics for Sales or Field Service, they're all built on top of the Power Platform. They're those big white dots you see in this slide. But in fact, what the Power Platform allows you to do is build the line of business applications that are unique to your business. And if you are using our first-party apps, great, then there's no integration because they're built on the same platform. But it's not a requirement in any way. So those of you who have used our tools, know that we align, we Microsoft, with the business analyst, the person who sort of knows the business problem but isn't a programmer. Things like Excel and Access allow business users to create their own solutions. And that's where the Power Platform picks up. When we talk about the Power Platform, we're really talking about a three-legged stool. We talk about Power Apps, which is our act part. That's the UI, that's the visualization piece. And Power Apps is actually two different UI models that are generally used together depending on the problem. There is the Microsoft Flow leg, which is our automation leg, things that we can do and make to run in background. And in fact, is kind of the low-hanging fruit in the Power Platform. There are many companies that come in through the automation route even before the user interface route. And then the final leg, the analysis leg of the stool, is Power BI. So let's continue, and we'll start with talking about the user interface piece, the application platform service that we refer to as Power Apps. So as I mentioned, there are several types of Power Apps. There's two. One is a Canvas app and one is a model app. So we use them for different reasons. The Canvas app allows us to build pixel perfect applications, connect to various data sources, and perform tasks. Model apps allow us to leverage our business processes. But the way I like to define it is this way. A Canvas app is something that an individual uses to accomplish a task. A model app allows my business to do continuous improvement based on our business process. And I think this example will help you to form why I use one over the other or why I use them together. So though I know this is oil and gas, imagine you were a insurance company, maybe an auto insurance company, and the primary business process that you did was determine whether or not to pay a claim and how much you paid. You might have a very sophisticated business process that allowed you to go and determine whether or not I paid that claim. There might be many points in the process where different people got involved. There might be machine learning and AI in that process. That whole piece of it would be a model app because it's about the process that your business does. But in the field, you have an adjuster, and the adjuster goes out to where the accident was. Maybe they use their phone, a mobile application, a tablet to take a picture of the car that's damaged, get information from the claimant, maybe do an appraisal while they're out there. That would be the Canvas app because they're performing a task that then feeds that information back to the model app. So on most complex line of business applications, we use both application types to accomplish the results. So let's first talk about Canvas apps. The way we use it is we connect to data, we create a form, and then it can automatically display on any mobile device, whether that's a phone or a tablet. The Canvas, the studio that we use for a Canvas app, looks a lot like PowerPoint. Screens are analogous to slides in PowerPoint. And it also works a lot like Excel in that when we want something to happen, we use formula like we use in Excel. Oops, got 1, 2 ahead of myself here. The way that we connect to data is through these things we call connectors. Right now, we actually have over 265 out-of-the-box connectors, and the broad majority of them are for non-Microsoft properties. So you connect to data with your Canvas app and interact with it. I don't have to be a developer to do that. And then when I create my apps, they're instantly available for iPhone or Android tablets. You can run them on PCs as well through the web, all immediately available. But some of the most interesting places for these things to be available are embedded inside other applications. So we can embed a Canvas app inside a SharePoint site, or inside a Microsoft Teams site, or inside a Power BI dashboard, or reverse it and take the Power BI visualization and embed that in the Canvas app. They all work together that way. And when you start embedding these applications, the Canvas apps in other applications, what you get is a single pane of glass that a user can use to accomplish the solution they're looking for. So let's just. Now, one of the things that you can leverage, you don't have to leverage, but you can leverage with the Power Platform is something we call the Common Data Service. It consists of a common data model, which is an open source model that we've been working with SAP and Adobe on to define common business objects. But probably the best part of the Common Data Service is that last word, service. It lets non-developers do things that would normally require you a DBA to get to do. Again, we have standard entities, business entities defined. You can add your own, you can customize ours, but building things like calculated fields and roll-up fields without programming through just the modeling allows you to do very powerful things. And perhaps the most powerful is the out-of-box security model that comes with the system. It provides row-level security right out of the box. Now, if we switch from Canvas apps to model apps, the key word there is model. It's about defining the data model that defines your business problem. Once you define that data model, the system can basically on its own create forms for those entities so it's easy to interact with them. So when we talk about a form, that's something that shows a particular record from an entity and the data that's related to it. We have a concept of a view, which is like a spreadsheet that shows you many records from that entity. And then finally, we have the idea, we have visualizations that we can create interactive dashboards so you can see your data and the graphics together and then drill into the information. And the combination of those three things together is what we refer to as a model app. And we'll see that in the demonstration today. Now, flows, that automation piece I talked about, is the low-hanging fruit in the Power Platform. It allows you to automate common tasks, things that you want to occur without the either requirement of a person to be involved. And what makes up a flow is pretty simple. There's an event that starts a flow and then a set of actions that follow that trigger. Now, they can have conditional logic, they can go and spawn other flows, but the key is an event starts it and a set of actions follow it. Now, what those events are is a key part of it. But to help users get started, especially if they're new to Flow, we have templates for the common kind of things that would happen in your application. Maybe when a new record is created or a new account is created, you want to send out email or send a text message out. Those kinds of things. So what are the triggers that start a flow? Well, they can be scheduled, automated, instant, or a special case called the business process flow. So real quick, let's have a look at what those are. Scheduled flows, just like it sounds, right? So you go ahead and have a timing, once an hour, once a day, once a week, once a minute, and the flow runs. An instant flow is a user started flow. So you might have a button in your application that when they click the button, the flow starts. Or if they're running flow on their mobile device, they can run in and do an instant flow there. So the user starts the event. An automated flow is probably the one you'll use the most. That's when you start based on some sort of trigger, usually in the database. So a record is created, a record is deleted, someone changed a particular field outside of a particular set of values you were looking at, and you start the process going from there. Then a business process flow is where we design what your business does, and you repeat it over time, and we analyze the difference in the steps. And again, we'll drill into this more as we get into the demonstration. Then the last leg of the Power Platform is the analytics leg, Power BI. This one I'm sure you're probably familiar with. It's where we take data from disparate sources and allow you to bring it together and create visualizations of that information to help you better do your job. Now, in the end, the Power Platform runs on top of Azure. And while that itself might not be noteworthy, the benefit of that is that we can leverage all the services of Azure from the Power Platform, whether it's in a Power App or Power BI or in Flow. We can leverage the services that Azure provides, like cognitive services or blob storage or machine learning. All those things come along with us because we're building on the Power Platform. Now, one of the ones we use the very most is the Cognitive Services Power Platform. I built an application for an oil and gas company where I used the Vision API that did weld detection. So a person would take a picture of a weld and it would evaluate it based on the database of pictures of welds I had put into my Vision model and determine, is that a good weld or a bad weld? And if it wasn't a good weld, it would set off, create a service case, and go follow it through and notify the right people that maybe this weld needs to be inspected. But any of these cognitive services can be used by the application to go and leverage, again, the platform that you're on. But really, that's enough of me talking. Now, how about I go out and I'll build out this application. So if you could give me control, I'll go and share my screen here. Okay, so let's share my monitor 3. Okay, so can I just get confirmation that you're seeing a screen that says Power Apps here up in the corner?
Yep, we can see it. Yep.
Awesome. Okay, so this is the base Power App Studio. Now, to give you an idea of what the business problem was that I was solving here, this particular oil and gas company has a set of people that go out and inspected properties, and they would look at the property and determine its viability for possible acquisition, either for drilling for minerals or oil, or for some other use for the corporation. So it's basically these tracts of land that are being inspected, and the information for these tracts of land was spread across many different data sources, disparate data sources that weren't related to one another. They needed a way to bring them together and collect some information about the tract of land, and then go back to their business process and determine, should we move on and continue with the acquisition of this particular tract. So we're in the Power App Studio right now. You can see the main URL is make.powerapps.com, and you can go and get a trial yourself. But I'm just going to jump right in. I'll go into the apps section here. It gives a list of all the apps that I have. We're going to go ahead and create one right now. We're going to create a Canvas app. And I'm just going to pick a blank application to create. We're going to start from absolute zero, where nothing is built for us. And we're going to go ahead and build out this land tract inspection app. And as I said, we'll do some of the work and then we'll put it in the oven and it'll come out a finished app. So in the base application, you'll see on the left-hand side, we call it the tree view, tells me what's in the app. Right now, it's just a single screen with nothing on it. On the right-hand side, I have the properties of the selected object. And then at the top here, you'll see me use this a lot. There is the property and then a formula bar, just like Excel. And we have our menus up at the top for inserting things or getting views of things like our data sources. And the first thing I'm going to do is, in fact, pull in some data, because we have this, again, this requirement. We need to pull in the information about these land tracts, but it's stored in different places, different parts of the information. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm on View Data Sources, and I'm going to add a data source. And I'm going to create a connection. Now, these are the ones I used most often. If I went into New Connection, it would show me the 260 plus ones. But the first set of data on these tracts of lands I have to inspect, they happen to be in Washington State. And that happens to be in a shared Excel file. So all the users share this file and they put info into it. And in it, there's a table called WA tract, stands for the Washington tracts of lands that need to be inspected. So we'll go ahead and connect to that. And then I'll add another data source, which is in one of our ERP databases that keeps track of what the current value of that property is. So I'll go into that database and I'll look for a table called property values. Now again, this information is in a database somewhere. The other information is in an Excel file somewhere, completely separate, never the two shall meet. But now we have connections to both of those data sources. So let's go ahead and see how we can illustrate some of that in our application. By default, it comes in with a blank screen, but what I'd like to do is go ahead and pick one of the templated screens. I'll pick just a simple one here, this scrollable screen, and it will go ahead and add it and add the base components. And I'm going to add a second one too, so I think I'm going to do a couple of things with that. And I'll go ahead and just delete the primary screen that it gave us, and we'll start with this first one here. Now, it has a control on it we won't need for our demonstration, the canvas control, so I'll just delete that. And it basically gives us a blank screen with a title bar on it and a little header bar. So maybe the first thing I'll do is I'll rename the screen from the generic screen 2 to something like track list. And this is the screen we'll list all the tracts of land out on. And if I click on the title bar there, you can see here on the right in the properties list, it has the text for the title there. And also here in the formula bar, it says the text property and then equals this formula, which is just hard-coded text title. So why don't I just go right in there and I'll put the words track list. And so now we have a very simple hard-coded title in that control. No real big deal there. Now some data on it. Well, the control that we use most for showing lists of data is what we call a gallery control. And I'm going to go in and select this vertical gallery. Now, when it comes in, it just has sample data in it. But we can come over here to the right. You'll see there's an items section. It says select the data source. And when I do that, I'll go and select that Excel file, the W8 tracks data. And it will go in, it'll create a row for each one of those, but I'm going to go and change the fields that it's looking at. I have a thumbnail of the tract of land. I want to look at maybe the size of the tract of land, and then ultimately the name of the tract of land. And I'll come back over here, I'll stretch this out to the full size of the screen, and now I have a line for each land tract in that file. That's pretty neat. But one of the things I see immediately is that my size field, it looks a little funny. Some of them have numbers, these are the acres, but some of them have this -1 in it. And that doesn't make a lot of sense to me as a user. I would look at that, I wouldn't know what that was. But as a Power Apps creator, I can go in and click into that field, and you'll see in the formula bar, it gives me that the formula is equal to this item dot size, and that's the name of the field. What this item in red refers to is that whatever row you're on, use that row and go into the size field and then pull out that value and put it in here. But here's our first chance to use a formula. I'm going to make this conditional. So we'll use an if statement. Now, if you don't use formula in Excel, this might seem like code, but as soon as you use it once or twice, it becomes a very simple thing to do, just like using the sum formula in Excel. So I'll say if, and you'll see it's tracking me underneath. We get a sense, and it puts in the left parenthesis, and it's looking for here up at the top, it's telling me I want a logical test. So I'm going to say if that size is greater than 0, and then we put the comma in. Now it says I want the true value. So what I want it to tell me is give me the size, and then maybe append onto the end of it so I know that this is in acres. And now for the else value, if it's not true, then I just want the words size unknown. So as soon as we do it, we look at this screen, now it's going over, and where we have a value, it says the number in acres, but where we don't, size unknown. Much easier for an end user than to go and be able to get value out of this data. So now let's do the next big important thing. Let's go ahead and add another field into this and get it from our other database. So I'll go ahead and I'll insert a label. And when it comes in, right now, it only knows about the data that's in the Excel file because we connected it to the Excel file. And in fact, when I go over it and I click on the color, you'll see the items here in the formula says W8 tracks. Well, now is where we're going to go and connect the two pieces of data together. And again, this is a formula that at first might seem a little intimidating, but in fact is pretty straightforward. So what I want to do is I want to add a column to this set of data that comes from the other data source. I want to look it up in the other data source. So because I've come to the front, the system knows there's only a few things that you can do here. One of them is add columns. So I'll go ahead and I'll say add columns, and I want to call that column something like, let's say it's book value, because the other table has the values of the properties. Okay, and now it's looking for an expression. And that expression is, where does it get this information from? Well, it has to do a lookup. So I'll start typing lookup, it gives it to me. I want it to look up, list the places where I can look up in that other data source, property values. And then it's looking for a condition. Well, I want to look at a field called property ID. That's in the property values table. And where it's equal to the ID field in my source in Excel, then what I want you to do is return to me, I think we called it red book value. So let's have a look at this. What is this formula saying? It's saying you started off with this thing in Excel called W8 tracks, but we want to add a column to it. We're going to call that column book value, and we want you to go get it by looking in the property values table. And where the property ID in the property values table equals the ID in the tracks table, bring over the red book value, and indeed call that field book value. So now when we come back to the gallery and we look at that label that we entered, rather than putting the description in, I'll just click a dot and start typing, oh, look it, there's now a new field, book value. And for each record here, we have that value that came from our ERP system. So I can't stress enough, this data is totally disconnected in our enterprise, but through the tool we're allowed to in, we can combine it on the same screen and do some really interesting things with it. Okay, so now what we really want to do in this application is go ahead and drill into these values, into these tracts of land, and investigate them more. So I want to do the detail here on this screen 3. Maybe I'll rename that as track detail. Now, on the screen, I don't need this canvas control again, so I'll get rid of that. But on the screen at the title, rather than making that hard-coded, I want it to be whatever one we clicked on in the previous screen. This is one of the key parts of a Canvas app. We can refer to things throughout the application directly by just pointing back to the thing we were looking at. So we were looking in the gallery. And again, as I start to type it, the IntelliSense comes up. I want to see whatever was selected. And then I want to see the name field. And as soon as I do, you see it puts the name of the track we were on. If we go back to that first list and I go and I click on the Bryant Playground, what I want to do is click on these arrows and have it take me to the second screen. So let's go in and I'll click on that arrow and I'll come to my action menu. I'll click on action and I want to navigate. By default, it sees there's only one place to go, so it puts in the formula to navigate to that track detail screen using a fade transition. So now I'll click on this Beersheba track, and as I click on that, we come to the second screen, and sure enough, dynamically, the title is changed. That's kind of one of the root parts of it. But now let's go in and insert a image control, because I want to see a map of my particular property. Now, an image control can take any kind of input. It can take input from a URL or input from a database. In fact, if I just put a simple URL here in the formula, you'll get a picture of my dog and a little truck I made. But probably what you want to do, and the people that use the app, is see a map. And I'm sure all of you have gone out either to Bing Maps or some other website that lets you do maps and put in an address and asked it to show you a map of it. Well, we can do that too. And while this formula starts out looking kind of daunting, it's actually pretty straightforward. Now, when you use Bing Maps directly, you go to Bing. But if you use it as a programmer or here inside of a tool like Power Apps, you call dev virtual earth. So virtual earth is the website, and we're asking for an aerial map that has labels. And rather than sending it the address, I have the latitude and longitude of my properties in my Excel file. So again, here I'm saying go back to gallery 1 and look at latitude and longitude. That's the coordinates. Now the zoom level is important. This is how Bing expects to get it, because that tells it how much of the map you want to see. Now, when you're doing anything with Bing programmatically, you need a Bing key. These are free, and it just identifies who's using it. And then finally, this last part says I want a push pin at the coordinates with the name of the property on it. So as we look down here, we can see now I have a map of the Beersheba track and a push pin right where it is. Let's go back to the first one. Let's pick that Alkali Beach track. And now we've got a completely different map because it's a different place, different coordinates. Well, now let's make this one more step fancier with really not much programming at all involved. I'm going to put a slider control on the map. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to control the zoom level of this map with this slider control. So I know because of experience that the zoom levels of Bing are 0 to 19. We can see here by default it was set to 15. But I'm going to take my slider control and I'm going to set it by default to 10 and then set the maximum to 19. So now the slider will go between 0 and 19. And I'll come back to that URL, and rather than putting a hard-coded 15 in there, I'm going to say, go look at that slider 1, there it is, and the value of whatever it is. And that way, you'll be able to go ahead and make the slider value control what the map is seeing. Okay, I'm going to skip that and go right to the finished app, which is right here. So let's go ahead and run this. And when I click on one of the properties, I go in, I can slide the slider bar, and it can change the zoom level of the particular map I'm looking at. Click on the X here, I can drop back to the first set of items. You can see it's refreshing now. These dots that go across the top, because I had that parked for a while, it's just refreshing the data in the application. But I want to point out a couple of things. First here, let's look at, there's another field I added here to the bottom. It says that this tract of land is 1,994 miles away from me right now. How does it know that? Well, these apps can look at the controls on the device you're using. So I know the latitude and longitude of my park, that's in Excel. I also know the latitude and longitude of the device that's accessing it. So I can run a formula and figure out how far away you are. Now, if we continue in, we go in back in. I've also added some fields here. So I'm an assessor, and this particular property there, we brought over the book value, is 8.4 million. I'm going to say that it's worth 9 million and say that it might have oil. And I'll go ahead and I'll click that Submit Review. Now what's happening is the information from the Excel file and the information from the ERP file and the information that I manually loaded is being combined together, and I'm using Microsoft Flow to create another record in our database so we can follow through with our business process. Now, what does the flow look like that did that? Well, this is it right here. It has a couple of important steps in it. The most important being this one here, where we create a record, and all these purple boxes you're seeing are the data that I sent over from the Power App. And then when that's done, I go ahead and send out a new email and then respond to Power App saying that that process is done. So if I go ahead and I look into my email, here's the new email that just came in. It's at 10:43. So there's a new tract pending. It's the Alkali Beach, book value 8.4, 9 million, might have oil. So that was automatically triggered, those events in the combination from our Power App. I was clicking on that, that last button, Submit Review. So now we can move from the Canvas app to the Model app. I'll go ahead and refresh this dashboard. And we should see then there right at the top of the list, there's the tract of land that we added. You'll see it was worth 8.4 million. We assessed it at 9. And so there's a tract profit. Now notice this one is positive. The one underneath it, Golden Gardens, is negative. These fields are being automatically calculated for me. That's one of the things that the Common Data Service does. It can make those tracts of land available or those calculated fields available to me. So if I go ahead and I click into our particular record for Alkali Beach, looks like it's taking a little bit to go. So this is our Model App business process. You'll notice the process has 3 stages. The first stage where we're collecting the data, and then we can move over to the next stage, scientific findings, where me as a person evaluating this, I might have to go in and say that my inspection date was today, the porosity of the soil is maybe 0.8. I fill in that information to go through and evaluate this property. But you'll notice on my form here, I also have a Canvas app embedded, that same application. So we can take those Canvas apps and put it into the model app so the person doing the model can really investigate the data that's involved there. Now again, this one has 3 steps. I want to come back to the track list though and go and look at that one underneath it, the Golden Gardens with negative profit. When I go into that, you'll see this process, which is the same process, but it has 4 stages. Because the profitability was negative, we had to assign some financial reviewer to look at it. And we don't let the process proceed until that person has approved that this is financially viable to work with. So when the model app folks work on the application, decide what we should work with and what we should continue with, we can come into Power BI and do a very, very simple map and graph of our data, where we're showing here on the map geographically where are all those tracts of land I'm investigating. I might want to look at, for instance, just the state of Washington here, and we'll zoom up into that and see most are clustered around Seattle. Or I'll zoom back out and look at a particular zip code of information. And the dots themselves are the size relative to their value. So a small dot here's 2.3 million, and this one here, the larger one, 16 million. So we can analyze the data that we're working with, all again coming from the multiple data sources as part of that act, automate, and analyze of the Power Platform. So with that, if we could go back to the slides real quick. Okay, why do we use the Power Platform? What sort of applications do we use it on? Well, we call these line of business applications. And I like to read this slide from right to left. A line of business application, as we define it, is something I call noun management. It's a person, a place, or a thing that I'm managing, and most importantly, through a business process. So I manage this noun through a business process, and it generally has the auspice of a portion of my corporation. Some line of business applications are quite broad and they cover the entire organization, but those are pretty rare. So in a nutshell, full code versus no code, low code. Why do I do one over the other? Obviously, with full code, you have complete freedom over everything. All you need is a lot of skilled people and a lot of time. With no code, low code, you generally work with frameworks. There's a UI framework, it's very flexible, but you get things like the out-of-box security, out-of-box data connectivity to various things, out-of-box deployment and versioning for application lifecycle management. And you have the ability to let people who know the business problem, the business analyst, to be involved in the solution. Now, something that's less obvious, but still very important to note, is that primarily these applications are currently internally focused. So you wouldn't build an app that you'd resell in the iPhone App Store, for instance, for external users. Therefore, your internal company or your partners to use it. One of the big differences between the Power Platform and, say, Access and Excel in the old days, some people run companies on Excel and Access, and data gets spread over large areas on multiple machines, very hard to govern. We've built the Power Platform around IT being able to control administration and governance, both of the applications and the information. So when you build out those apps, they do require a reasonable amount of admin and governance. And what we're seeing, we Microsoft, is that the partner community has latched onto this really big, and we're seeing that community grow, and the capabilities of what companies can do with their partners certainly growingly equally rapid. So with that, I am at the end of my time. I'd like to turn it back over to Matt.
Sure, Chet, great job and really good data points.
Chet and Matt, thank you for your time today. I'm just going to conclude the Dynamics 365 Power Platform for Oil and Gas Services webcast. If any of you all have other questions you'd like to put through after we're finished, you can see on screen here I've shared Matt's email address, m.pfohl@soprasystems.com. So thank you all.